when the world has got you down. And
Alzheimer's sucks. It's an equal opportunity disease that chips away at everything we hold dear. And to date, there's no cure. So until there is, we continue to fight with the most powerful tool in our arsenal, love. This is Love Conquers Alls, a real and really positive podcast that takes a deep dive into everything Alzheimer's, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And now, here are your hosts, Susie Singer-Carter and me, Don Priest.
Good afternoon, I'm Susie Singer-Carter.
And I'm Don Priest, and this is Love Conquers Alls. Hello, Susan.
Donald, how you doing?
I'm swell. What is the word? That's a matter of opinion, but I think I'm swell. So,
well, if you do, that's what counts.
Yes.
I am swellish. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm swellish.
Ish.
Ish. Yeah. Well, it's been
What's
a
happening?
nonstop. I'm busy. I know. Doing things, and we are both busy. But let's see. We had my two Rugrats for the weekend. I had a 4-year-old, and my 16-month-old granddaughters for the weekend, and I am exhausted, and like the house was like a hurricane happened. Like, I don't know what happened. I think, is it possible to have too many toys?
Apparently it's not. The amazing thing is it's literally a disaster area within the first 11 seconds that they're here.
Somehow
they
skilled.
distribute the toys at a rate that is actually humanly impossible.
And yet it's done before our very eyes. Before our very eyes. But it's pretty extraordinary and skillful, I might add. Yeah. So, but loads of fun. We had a slumber party. We had, so all those fun things, girly girl stuff, and all that thing. So I enjoyed that. And on the business side, we're at the finish line of our documentary, No Country for Old People. And we're at that point where we're bravely taking notes from strangers and others, and so difficult to hear other people's. It's like writing a book. Like our guest that's going to be on in a couple of minutes. I'm sure he's had the same feeling when people come in and start chopping your baby up, and you're like. Wow.
You don't understand.
Stop.
And that's your opinion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's where we're at, and we're being brave. We're being brave big girls and big boys, and listening with open ears and open minds-ish. And that's what we're doing.
Absolutely.
But
That's
I
all
will
we can
remind
do.
you that we're still raising money for the finishing funds, and it's all tax deductible. I'm sure if you listen to us, you probably know this already, but we're taking donations still through the National Consumer Voice for long-term care, and they are incredible, and they are our partners, and it's 100% tax deductible, and but we're very close to getting this out there for everybody, and we hope that it makes a big, huge change, and we're proud of our work. So
absolutely, because we're not doing this for ourselves. We're doing this for we're trying to
everybody
save everyone from going through what Susie went through and what countless people are going through right now every minute. So
as we speak, we need to change our long-term care system now.
Stat,
right? But that's what we do. It's like when you go through a crisis of any kind or a challenge, and then you learn, then I think that it is important to pay it forward, right? And so that other people can benefit from your experience, like our next guest, right?
Indeed.
So
Who
Don,
did
why don't
just
you?
That.
I know. Why don't you do a lovely introduction, and then we'll get into it.
I will do that right now.
Great.
I'm a lawyer by trade, politician by practice, and an academic by accident. These are the musings of the remarkable Max Sherman, a former Texas state senator, president of West Texas State University, and dean of the LBJ School of Public Affairs. His leadership roles also include president of the National Association of Schools of Public Affairs and vice president of the Harry S. Truman Scholarship Foundation. And recently, he was honored as an 80 over 80 recipient. Now a young and energetic 89 years old, Max Sherman's life has been significantly influenced by women, but one in particular has shaped who he is today. In 1953, Max was among 4 high school boys conducting a church service at a local jail when he first laid eyes on Jean Alice, who was there with her fold-up field organ, and their love affair still thrives to this day. But in 2002, Jean Alice started noticing that something was different and soon after was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Through the inevitable progression of the disease, Max and Jean Alice's journey together is now chronicled in the beautiful and poignant memoir, Releasing the Butterfly, A Love Affair in 4 Acts. An honest, heart-wrenching, and insightful look at not only the disease, but a bond that could not be broken. And we are so excited to have the author of this ode to a 70-year love affair with us today. So let's say hello to Max Sherman. Hello, Max.
Hello, Max.
Hi, Don and Susie. I'm delighted to be with you.
Thank you. We're delighted to be with you. Everything about who you are and your love, your incredible love, lifelong love, resonates so deeply with us, and your compassionate caregiving is just so beautiful to read about and to learn about, and just really goes with our show, Love Conquers Alls, because that's really what you did. You used the love, and you're still using the love, right?
When we were together just a short time before we're talking here, and we were sitting there, and she has her head there, and so I've learned if in my raspy voice I would sing to her. So I was singing an old song that everybody knows, and I'm not very good at it, but I said, "Morning has broken in the first morning." And she looks over him and raises it up and opens those hazel eyes, and I just melt. And then we've learned in Alzheimer's, you have to read different signals. And one of the signals that we've learned is that the way that we kiss now is a little different than when we used to kiss on the lips and really, and if we're talking to it, she will, that's 3 big kisses. I got 5 of those big kisses this morning after singing that song.
Aww.
So life still goes on, and it's great. We've learned to make love in a different way, and absolutely every moment is just as precious as it was when we first started. And I had that first little peck on the lips that she gave me when we were just a bunch of kids.
Oh,
Wow.
that's so
Definition
beautiful.
of a silver lining.
Yeah, no, it's so beautiful, and it's such a great. You're a poster child for the best kind of approach to this kind of journey, And it took, and I know from reading your book and also listening to you talk on other interviews, that it is a learning curve, right? And that
Absolutely.
and it takes that the tripping over ourselves and realizing that, okay, this isn't working, because I always say that when my mom was diagnosed, I was certain that I was going to be the one that cures this. Other people can't, but I will, right? Until you realize that monster is way stronger than all of us. And now I'm, going to have, and then I figured out how to lean into my mom, into every stage, and learn how to communicate with her like you're doing with Jean Alice, which is like, it is so rewarding and so beautiful. And just really, really compliment you on going the distance the way you are.
Susie, could I maybe just pick up on that, because as I've been asked to talk about the book with different groups of senior citizens, and we live in a senior retirement community. It's a wonderful place, but most people probably here because somewhere in their lives, either a parent or a grandparent or someone close has been touched by Alzheimer's. And everyone's afraid, well, it might happen to me or it might happen close to me. And so I don't think we're ever prepared for it. And as I've met with these groups, that a chapter, I think is chapter 46, and it's at one page in the regular page book, and it's at another in the large print book. But it's only about 3 pages. It's very short, but it makes the point that you were just talking about. Because I was making all the decisions. I picked out the clothes she wore. I picked the food that we ate. I took us wherever we needed to go. I chose what we watched on television. I was really trying to be the fixer, and I could fix this. Well, I'm not going to fix it, I finally realized. And I said that what was happening is that I was stealing my love from her nibble by nibble, little by little, by doing that every time. And I had to learn that I was not the drill sergeant. I was not the one who said, get in line, step up. You're going too slow. You're going too fast. And all of a sudden, it just shocked me that all I need to do was just shift gears. Nothing big. It's like making love in the world of Alzheimer's. It's just shifting gears. And mine was, Jeannie, would you like chocolate or vanilla ice cream? Would you like to watch the news, or would you like to watch a musical tonight? Would you like to wear this blouse or this blouse? And almost always she would say, oh, you decide. It wasn't, but the most important thing, the headline of that chapter is she wanted to be asked, because she was Jeannie. She was Jean Alice. She was not a child. She was not a person in the Army under the drill sergeant. She had her unique personality. And that to me is the chapter in the book that was my wake-up call, that I had to do it differently. And all it was is shifting gears. And love making is shifting gears. And the little is a kiss just as much as a big old smacker on the lips. It's a beautiful kiss. I love every one of them. I would not ever take one of them back. And it's different than it was. But you put your finger on it.
I love that. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I think there's a lot of consistency in that journey, but with people that have, decided to step back and really take a look at how we're interacting with our person, with the person that we love, and looking to find them at the stage that they're at. Like, I could find my mom. I could still, we shared music too. My mom was a singer. And so music became really important, like it did with you and Jean. So I think that, I related to that as well. And that it is, like you said, it's magic. And, it lasts till the very bitter end. And it made my mom so happy. And it really was our love talk. And then we also shared a sense of humor, and so I would always come in with something, to catch her off, and she'd give me that big old smile, like, even when she lost her ability to articulate words, but she was talking to me. I saw it. I knew it. I became the words for her.
You bet.
Right? Yeah. There's nothing more beautiful than that, because when we accept the person, and also what you said, like acknowledging that they are still who they are. Their soul is who they are inside, and so we can respect it. We don't need to, but we can, and it's better.
Well, you probably had this experience with your mother, but one of the things, even again this morning, when we have these moments where we're really connecting in that way, and all of a sudden she doesn't talk now, but all of a sudden she's really talking, making attempts to talk, getting something out there, because you can tell that you've resonated, you've touched something. And the same is true, and the reason that I started this morning by singing to her is that she's a pianist, she's an organist, she's a beautiful musician, and music actually reaches in, and when those things happen, she responds. In our senior living facility last night, a woman did a series of things on composers and played the beautiful piano, and finished up with the Scott Joplin number. Jeannie used to play Scott Joplin all the time, and I would always ask her, well, play the entertainer. And boy, she would pound that piano and play the entertainer. And probably if we play the entertainer, she perks up and gets up and looks in the mirror, looks at me, and she's right there with you. And I think we don't always grasp the potential of music as reaching into a mind that we don't understand. As I understand it, we don't now know how it all works. We have some ideas, some science has worked on it, but we're still trying to figure it out. But you do know there's certain things that connect, and those are to be treasured.
I agree. I loved what you, in your book, and you talk about, there's parts that you spoke about your wife in the beginning stages and her experience of those beginning stages and how she described them. And I always find it fascinating because I used to say, my mom and I were so close, and I would say, I kind of missed my moment because I was such in the throes of it, to really sit down and say, what are you feeling? Like, what is this like? And you talked about the fog and that connection, Can you tell our audience, like, that part of it, like what your wife in the beginning stages, she really articulated a lot of what it felt like when she would get lost, right? And I think that's so important for us who don't have it to really understand the fluidity of it, because it comes and goes in the beginning, correct?
Yeah, well, I think so. I think, she really was the one who put her finger on it about 12 to 14 years before it hit like a tsunami and just overpowered us. She said, we built a new home when we both came to Austin, Texas. I was dean of the LBJ school, and she was head of the conference center, and we had very active lives. So we, in December, usually had about 5 different events in our home where we had different groups in, from academia, from business, from law, because I was a lawyer in my early days, on and on. So we had these different groups in, large numbers, and the house was built to entertain. And after we sat down to have a glass of wine at about New Year's Eve of 2002, she said, it's the first time that I've had trouble remembering all the names. And she could remember hundreds of names. And when people come in, she would greet them by their names and their first name. And she said, all of a sudden, it's the first time, and it's the first time I've felt the pressure of getting prepared for these events, because she used to just love it, and we had our assignments, and she did put the food together, and my job was to clean the windows and polish the floors and do all that. But she said it's the first time, so we were able to get an appointment at the Brain Health Center in Dallas in 2003 in January, and we went up and they did a two-day evaluation, and so they had all this material, and the main doctor there is a very distinguished doctor at Southwest Medical School, and he's the one that supervised it. And so out of that we started doing regular checkups, but she would always, every year we would meet with Dr. Hart, and he would ask questions, and he had about 4 interns with him to teach him how to work with people who were struggling with dementia and Alzheimer's. And he's a great doctor. And so I got a chance to watch it over the years of everything you ask about. And one of the things he said that to me is critical is he said, she should be getting worse, but she's not. She still has impeccable appearance. When I ask her questions, she looks me right in the eye. And he said, as long as that's there, they said that there may be issues where she takes the grandchildren to school and gets lost, or she's going to meet some friends and takes a turn the wrong way. So those were the little signals, and she talked about those. But by and large, she felt competent. And then she is an organist in our church. The organ there is actually named for her because it's a big, beautiful organ, and she was a great church organist. And we dedicated it on her birthday in 2014. and we had the fellow who does the Watermaker organ in Philadelphia who came down to play for it. And she was in the audience. The church was full of people, friends from years from our church. And she was in her element. And we did 2 events with friends, musicians one time, friends the next. And then 1 month later is when all hell hit. And they took a flip because she had been on high, going strong, loving every moment of it. And boom, all of a sudden, whatever triggers in the mind hit, and that's when I shattered a femur and had to go to the hospital for 3 or 4 weeks to recover and get back to it. Our kids had to make the decision for her to, and I think it's important for your listeners because I think I am a person who's done things. I am a fixer, and I probably, if I hadn't shattered the femur, we might not have made the move we did for her to have good professional care. I might have tried to put it off and put it off and put it off, but all of a sudden I'm not there, and our kids had to deal with it. So I think that one of the dangers for all of us who are caregivers is that we think we can fix it. And I will have to admit, I plead guilty, I plead guilty, I plead guilty. I thought I could fix it. And all of a sudden I had to realize I could not fix it. But I had to live with it. We had to live with it. We had to love with it. And your program is about love. Love is so critical, absolutely critical to how you deal with a person who's struggling as you're struggling. In many ways, we both thought that maybe life was over. And maybe I'm talking too much, but the very first thing I wrote, I'm in hospice. I'm on a deathbed. My family's all around me because I thought our lives were over. And they asked me some question, and I'm not really sure what I'm saying. And this is all fictional. It's just in my mind. And all of a sudden I see a stage floating overhead. And I say, well, maybe that's it. And all of a sudden I decided I could write about it in fiction and not in reality. So I took the stage and I took Thornton Wilder's play Our Town, and I created myself as George, and I created Jean Ellis as Emily. So almost everything that was written originally was written for fictional characters. And the psychiatrist or the therapist was really the stage manager out of Our Town. Never dreamed it, never thought I would do that. And all of a sudden it becomes the vehicle. And you have to find the vehicle to how you live with it and how you make it work. And it evolved. And maybe a little later as we talk, I'll tell a story, because one of the things that scares the hell out of me, excuse my language, is that the stigma that no one wants to talk about it. No one wants to talk about it. So we say, oh, she's just forgetting. Oh, she didn't remember. And we kind of put it off, and we put it off. And then all of a sudden you realize, it's more than that. I can't fix it. And I'll come back to the stigma question in a moment, but I've kind of rattled on for a while. But I just think those are critical issues.
Right. No, it's exactly why I made My Mom and the Girl, because I mean, and I think also there's the stigma comes from misunderstanding and a lack of education, and that lack of education comes from ageism, and because people don't want to look at it, and it frightens them, and so it's easier to just to compartmentalize it and say, well, they don't remember, so that's it. You know, I mean, I talk about my brother when my mom was first diagnosed, and he would say, I'd say, why don't you come and see her more often? Well, she doesn't remember. You know, well, I'm sure you understand how silly that is. You know, it's like, yeah, and they do remember. They remember here. And so it's very important for them to have that support. But it's also so misunderstood. You know, it's just looked at in such a surface way. And so that it's easy to dismiss, and it's also, and I understand that it is difficult for people to face it. Some people aren't strong enough, I guess, right?
Let me give you an example, if I may, because
Sure.
it's a different area than we're talking about, but it was my wake. It was what helped me to work through it. I was asked to moderate a panel between Bill and Judith Moyers and their son Cope, and it was at the LBJ Library here in Austin, at the LBJ School and LBJ Library, and we had 1,000 people in the audience, and they were in there, and the issue was to talk about addiction and how people become addicted because Cope Moyers had become addicted, almost died in Harlem in a crack house, and he's written books about it. It was all there. But on the point of stigma, Judith Moyers told a story that night that was a wake-up call for me when she talked about breast cancer. She said for many, many years, no one would talk about breast cancer. And all of a sudden, people did. Betty Ford, Gerald Ford's wife, talked about having breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Judith Moyers talked about having breast cancer. So what happens today? We have 6 granddaughters. No grandsons, all granddaughters. We have one more in the hopper right now, a great-grand coming, another girl. We have all these girls. What did those young girls do? 2 of them have just finished college the last year. They come out and put fundraisers on. They put on their pink sweaters, they pink shirts, and they have a month, and they dedicate it to raising money for breast cancer. And there was a time when no one would talk about it. If you can get it out of the closet and get it out there, then I believe it's going to be a vehicle. I think I commend what you guys are doing and been doing it for 25 years. Get it out of the closet, talk about it, and you're going to help find ways eventually to deal with it for the caregiver and also the person needing the care.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, I mean, that's what we aim to do. And I think there's a lot of us now than there ever was before. You know, I know my mom had Alzheimer's for 16 years, and when I first, heard of it, I had preconceived ideas and stereotypes, about it. And I thought, oh my God, I thought I had to protect my mom, that people would not be understanding. And, I learned, it took me a little while, but I learned that people, when you educate people, they're much more, they are more understanding. They can be understanding and more than you think that they are or would ever be. And so that was very, that was enlightening and also reconfirming for me to find out how many people were actually much more empathetic and compassionate than I thought that they would be. And I think so it really showed me that if you educate people, give them the opportunity to step up, they will.
You bet. I think it may be in the book, but another wake-up call for me is that when Jean Alice was first down there, I was told to follow and I'm a lawyer. I've given a lot of advice to people that they didn't follow, and then they got in trouble, and then they really needed me, and I made a lot more money, but because they didn't follow professional advice. So when I was advised not to see Jean Alice when she went down to memory care, so for 3 months, I did not see her. 3 months. And later when COVID comes along, we go 6 months without seeing each other, 6 months. It's one hell of a life to have to live through. But on the first go-round, I called every morning at 10 and every evening at 6. And what I was told would happen, happened. Oh, Max, you've got to come and get me. I shouldn't be here. I should be with you. I can get my clothes packed. I can be with you. And there's a story in there by a judge who had with his mother. She wanted to be with. So you have to learn to let it happen, let her realize that is her home. We still are there every moment in love and spirit, but you have to learn that that's where she is. But when I could go down, there were 3 women who sat in wheelchairs, and they always had their heads down. And you thought, well, they're not compass or they're sleeping or whatever. And we had a little Shih Tzu dog. And so the church organist in our church got her to go down and play the piano with him one time when she was much earlier in her stages. And so they're playing the piano, 2 of them sitting side by side in the activities room. And I'm sitting by one of those women who never raised her head, had never seen her raise her head, do not know when she could raise her head. And I'm holding this little black 11-pound Shih Tzu dog in my arms. And all of a sudden, someone is petting the dog. There's a hand petting the dog. And I'm scared to death. I have no idea what's going on. And it's that woman who did not raise her head. How she knew that dog was there, I do not know. But there's something going on in the mind of all those people that we do not understand. And I think if you can allow yourself to experience the mystery of not knowing, because we're people who want to fix things, but if you can allow yourself to experience it, let them pet the dog. All of a sudden, they pet the dog. All of a sudden, the music comes on and they pop up and the head comes up. They heard a music they didn't know. Or if they like visuals, maybe they see a picture they didn't know. So be open to the possibilities. I just think it's a critical aspect that I've learned is be open to the possibilities of the unknown.
Right, right. That's such great advice. How did you find, how did you personally find your strength during all of this, like resilience? Because, it can be really just debilitating at times, when, the disease can manifest in different ways. And as much as we love the person and we're trying to understand, but, there's agitation, there's these kinds of, or even just simply like not recognizing you for a second, or not, I remember my mother saying when I had her, when she was living with me, and look, my daughters were there, and she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, you have friends over. I won't bother you." I was like, "Mom, these are your granddaughters." For that moment, she didn't see them as granddaughters. She saw them as my friends. And so those are things, right, that you have to figure out, how do we...
And that's heartbreaking.
It is. How did you find your strength?
Well, the way that releasing the butterfly starts is that we're sitting there watching television, and when we've had a glass of wine and we've just had a good evening, and all of a sudden she looks over at me and says, "What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. You're not my husband." And she just exploded and starts rushing to the door, and I have socks on. That's when I shattered the femur and had to go to the hospital. And we were in a favorite place of ours in Montana, and we rushed out to see the birds fly, and all of a sudden she looks at me and says, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" So those are moments that would crush you unless you didn't know. And I think it's the great thing about your program. Love conquers. And I think if you realize and you reach out with love, because in the next moment, she says, "Would you hug me? Would you give me a kiss?" And it's not the end of the world.
It's a moment. It's a
moment
that, and you just have to know it will pass.
That's
and there'll
right.
be more, but you can't let it define your relationship or who they
Or
are.
define the person, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember telling my mom later when she was, out of the agitation, saying, "Mommy, that hurts the girl's feelings." What did I say? I'd tell her, "Oh, I would never say that," and she would cry. It made her very, very upset. So, number one, note to self: never tell Mom again when she did something, because that was hurtful. She can't help it, right? And so, yeah.
I think that's an excellent point, because I think we all, you remember so and so, or you haven't seen this, or what. You just live in the moment, and you realize that. And my judge friend, he wrote the deal. I learned the value of the little white lie. When I was talking to her on the phone, and she wants me, "You got to come pick me up." I said, "Well, I'm still in rehab. I mean, I've got to get my leg fixed, so I've got a doctor's appointment." I didn't have. It was a lie. And then I have another friend who came in. Didn't make it into the book, but she would always, her husband was in dementia, Alzheimer's, for 8 or 10 years. She would come in every week and get his clothes and get them cleaned and pressed and everything. And one day she brought them in. Well, I'm not wearing those anymore. Those are not my clothes. And she was just stunned. And all of a sudden, the light flicked in her mind, and she says, well, let me get some more. She walks out in the hall, waits for about 2 minutes or 3, brings the same clothes in, and he hugs her and kisses, and it's okay. So you begin to realize that this moment may be hell, and the next moment may be resurrection. And so I think you just want to keep those things in mind as you work through it, because, and then there may be a moment where it doesn't recover as you thought it would. It's been recovering, as you may recall in the book. We have talks, and we're having good visits, and we have breakfast, and we have meals, and they go on, and all of a sudden it begins to deteriorate. It's not going to be a long meal, and all of a sudden, instead of a 45-minute meal, you know it's going to be 5 minutes, and you better call the helper to come and take her back to memory care. And so it evolves both negatively and positively. And I think on the positive side is what we're having right now. We meet every morning and every afternoon, twice a day, and some moments aren't as good as others. You don't want to expect today what you had yesterday. And I think it takes, for the caregiver, it takes the ability to let go.
Right.
And just to let go and expect the impossible. And, whenever the curtain comes down, it's down, and that's okay, and that's where it will be. But I think up until then, you say, the curtain may come up tomorrow. It may rain tomorrow. The butterfly may fly tomorrow. And so hold open the possibility.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
so healthy for not only them, but for the caregiver. It takes out that insanity, which you feel like sometimes you're in. It's like it's taking away all expectations of what should be, of what's going to come next, what makes sense, taking all of that out of the equation, and that takes away all of that confusion that the caregiver goes through,
and frustration,
and therefore and your attitude now, they can sense that. They can sense when you're upset or agitated, and so it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
I had to make a little talk recently, and I can't do it from memory too well, but a very good friend of mine, he's president of a small liberal arts university, and his father was a oil field worker, not a writer, and he read the book, and he determined that out of that his mother had a variety of Alzheimer's, and he had taken care of her for years. She's now been dead for a long time. So here's this father who has never written anything. He writes 2 beautiful poems that he talked about. One was going to the doctor, and how it wasn't his experience, it was hers, probably from 20 years before when he took her there. And he was putting it into a poem, and then he talks about what it is to be in that. And so all of a sudden you just realize that even the caregiver who's lost a spouse lives with it after it's over. So you've got to be prepared to allow for that possibility too, because you may not. Right now, we're fortunate. We're both alive. I'm 89 and Jeannie's 86, and we've been married almost 63 years, and we still are together. But when we're not, we're still together. And I think that whatever your religious belief is, that there's some way that mystery takes place, and you still have that beautiful love that held you together, keeps you together, will hold you together. And I think that's extremely important.
Right. Yeah. And to Don's point, it's like, it really is the epitome of living Zen, because you're living in the moment. And that, and really, on a spiritual level, that's really the highest way you can live, is to live in the moment and enjoy each moment. And because that's all we have, is this moment, this moment, this moment. And so, and as hard as we try to hold on to it, it's gone, right? So we can only just keep that moment that we are in now and treasure that. And because my mom, I've said this before, but my mom, when I would go to visit her, even in her late stages, and I'd say, "Mommy, how are you today?" And she'd go, "I am great. I'm alive, and the alternative sucks," right? So, because she loved life, and she was very much in this, and I thought that was such a beautiful sentiment, because it is really, it's beautiful to be alive. It's a gift, and here we are, the three of us, and we are communicating, and and this is what it is. It's now, and that's what it was with my mom, and that's how it is with you and Jean Alice. That you go in and you just embrace it for that.
Susie, you'd probably take the worst moment. You'd probably take the worst moment with your mom right now, wouldn't you? Over not having her. You have to realize that when you're also experiencing those horrible moments, that this is better than the alternative.
Let me share one experience, because since we've been here now 13 years, and it's an absolutely fantastic retirement place. And so, but memory care, we've had friends and people who've been there that are no longer with us. And I think it's not only you and your mom and me and Jean Alice, but you also could be available for some of the other people there that may not have you and have me. And I think of two instances of people that I got to know, because I would never have known them had I not been in the same area that my wife was. And so on two different occasions, they were both women, and I only knew them casually from being down there, and they had been ill. But what I remember so vividly is one of them, both of them in different ways, but similarly, is that they weren't talking, and I wasn't their husband, and I would hold a hand, and as I would talk, she would squeeze my hand. She would squeeze my hand. So even though I was a stranger in one way, I was there. And I think that it's not insignificant to be there not only for your mom and not only for me to Jean Alice, but to be there for others who may be there, maybe for the caregiver. We're talking about it because we can. There are a lot of caregivers that can't and don't, and they may just need someone to hold their hand and to be there. And I think that's where ministers and priests and people of all various backgrounds who help people is just to be there in the presence, and maybe to hold the hand and feel it squeeze and say, you knew something was going on, because if I was just jabbering, I know how to jabber, and all of a sudden she squeezed my hand. So I think the squeeze of the hand is a very good symbol, because it tells someone is there. There's someone there.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Human connection.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the language, right? That's the language that person was capable of, and she's telling you so much in that squeeze of the hand. Mm-hmm. And my mom would do that towards the end. She would squeeze, and she would smile, and I'd go, I hear ya, I hear those words coming, I know what you're thinking. I would try to fill in for her, because she couldn't say the words. So I would really pay attention. And also, you're so right. And, when it comes to being there for other people, and I also think that it not only serves them, it serves us, because there's nothing better than making, that feeling when you're there and you walk out and you realize, like, you just made so many people feel acknowledged and feel, that they're alive, and that they are, you're giving them, you're justifying them, and it's beautiful, and you can't have a better feeling than that. I'm telling you, I highly recommend it. I do. Who would have thought that you could feel so good leaving, a facility, even a nursing home where there's very, people with high acuities, but you sing songs and people are so happy. And by the way, you don't have to be the best singer. They'll be appreciative. It's like, join in, everybody. And it is a beautiful thing. It really is.
Yeah. And Max's Cat Stevens is on point, let me tell you. his his
Oh,
morning,
Morning
is
is
broken.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
will cheer up everybody. So
Well, Morning is Broken is a old. Actually an old. Where does it come from? The original. Do you know, Max?
I don't really know for sure. No.
Okay, because I know it's like I think it is some. It's from a. It might have been from a religious poem or something. I know it wasn't original.
Yeah,
I think
we're talking about the music, but in the early stages, it's not as true now. Although about every once in a while I try to, because when I was trying to court Jean Alice when we were college students, I knew she would loved English and literature and music, and so when we would meet, I actually memorized Shakespeare sonnet and then the Shelley sonnet, and the Shakespeare sonnet goes, "Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters, which in alterations finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempest and remains unshaken. It is the starred ever wondering bard whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but stretches out even to the edge of doom. But if this be error, and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved." But I think that's one of the classic pieces of poetry. But what does it focus on? Love.
love.
And it tells you that love is so powerful. I don't think we ever realize how hope and love and peace are things that reach deeply into the soul of a human being in a way that you can't explain. It's a mystery. And I just think that we don't give it enough credit.
Amen.
amen.
Amen to that. We really believe it. Wow, this went so fast. Jeez.
I do want to, I just want to touch on the fact that, you've took everything that you have learned and experienced over the years, and you did create this amazing book, Releasing the Butterfly, A Love Affair in 4 Acts. And I think you told me before we started actually that you wrote this for yourself initially, correct?
Right.
It was nothing you were planning on letting the world see.
Yeah, it was my therapy. It was for me, and it evolved. And as people learned that I was doing it, they asked me, "How are you dealing with it?" The questions would ask, and I'd try to relate, or maybe in answering a question, I would tell them I've written something last night about the horror of it. And I don't know that there's a chapter that I wrote in there that it was based upon a really life experience of ours. But when we were leaving Amarillo, Texas, where we had lived for many years, and our mutual friends all came together, and they had a quilt, and they each had a square in the quilt, some memory of our time there. And we had the quilt, and they gave it to us. And this was a true story, all really true. But I kept trying to understand what's going on. I was still trying to be the lawyer and figure it out. And so we take the quilt and we fold it up and take it out to our little Volkswagen and put it in the back seat. And I reach in to get my car keys, and I don't have them. So I think, well, these are our very close friends. We've been here. I'll go back in. They're probably on the floor somewhere. And so I go to the door, and all the lights are out. No one answers the door. No one hears the knock. There's no one there. And that was my fictional way of trying to understand where Jean Alice was. And I thought that would be one hell of a position to be in when there's no one there. And what we're talking about here, and we've talked about the last several minutes, it's absolutely critical to be there, for someone to be there. Mm-hmm. Because in that mind, which I don't understand, I'm not a scientist, I've read tons and tons of stuff, but I'll never understand it. But I think it's the horror when there's no one there. And Susie was there for her mother. I'm there for Jean Alice. I was there for 2 strange women that I didn't know well except casually, but to hold the hand And so I just think that that's something we do not want to lose.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. That's a beautiful metaphor that you just said, because that is, I mean, it is the to think about knowing you forgot something, but then not knowing where it is or what it is. That, you know, I think at some point in Alzheimer's it becomes what is it even, right? And then having no one there to help you through that is so frightening. It, you know, that, I mean, I get frightened. I'm sure you have the feeling too, if you forget a word or you forget something that you know. And, you know, I as the daughter, the genetic daughter of my mom, I think, it's happening. That's it. It's over. That's all. And my daughters have to remind me, Mom, we forget every day. Don't worry. We forget things every day.
Yeah.
You know, so, but, you know, just imagine if you were in that situation. I agree with you. How frightening it would be to be alone.
Yeah.
It would be so frightening. I agree. You're a tremendous human being.
Well, I'm glad to get to know you. I've had a lot of good opportunities. We're blue-collar kids who grew up in a blue-collar town and have had opportunities we never dreamed we would have. And this is one of them. We never dreamed we would live this long, and we would be talking about this subject, and we are. And I hope that somebody benefits and says, yeah, there's a way we can make this thing work.
I love it. I love it. And I love how vibrant you are and how you just a wonderful role model, and you're romantic to boot. And you do a great, you know, anybody's going to do Shakespeare for me, I'm in. That's good.
Thank you, guys.
Of course. Is there any last piece of advice that you want to give the audience if they are dealing with somebody, or maybe at the beginning stages, something that you've already dropped a lot of beautiful things, but if anything else you wanted to say before we say goodbye?
I would just say that I think we undervalue the value of a great, big, old, genuine hug. Just hug me. Put your arms around me and hug me.
Yep. I'll go with that.
Well, you've hugged us today. I mean,
Yeah.
you have. You've hugged us and our whole audience, I tell you.
Definitely. Definitely.
You can just feel it. You just emanate love. And that's, you know, that's everything.
Yep.
It is everything. And that's why, you know why, Susan?
Well,
I knew. Well, love is powerful, love is contagious, and love conquers all. We thank everyone for watching, listening today. We thank our very, very special guest, Max Sherman. Please do go look for his book, Releasing the Butterflies, A Love Affair in 4 Acts, and we'll have all that information online. Like us, share us, love us,
subscribe.
And we will absolutely see you next time. Subscribe.
Absolutely.
And
take care.
And thanks again for listening. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.